All right, let's do this. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our monthly webinar. Um, Honestly, did not expect to be sharing this topic in January. I feel like it feels like a really long time ago, but I think we could still say Happy New Year's. I think that's still like,
Yeah,
even though it feels like forever ago, I still think that's okay. So.
so much has happened this month already. But yeah, we're still in the first month of the year, so New Year still applies.
I know. It feels like April, but it's only like
I know it's been a roller coaster. We've had enough events, I think, in the first 21 days of this month to
yeah,
last at least the first quarter, but
yeah.
I
Yeah,
feel it.
so so again, hey, welcome to our monthly webinar. Thank you so much for joining. We're just like, I'm always just so surprised in a way that so many of you are interested in hearing what we have to say, and we're so grateful that you take the time of your day to join us for these monthly webinars. On top of being so busy managing 340B programs and dispensing medications and a million things that you all have going on. So I just want to just share my thanks for that, for joining and supporting us, for your encouragement, for the notes that we get, for the feedback that we get on these monthly webinars. And our goal has always been since we started these is we want to provide an immense amount of value. We try to keep these short, 30, 45 minutes. That is on purpose. We don't want to waste your time. We want to jam pack a bunch of good information into a short period of time so that you have something that you can take back to your 340B program, learn something, and hopefully put that into practice in your 340B program. There have been a ton of webinars and podcasts on this topic. I think in general, what I have seen are webinars and podcasts that tend to be very legal focused. We are going to try to give you a sort of combination of that, the high level, and also the to steal the 340B health quote, the lessons from the field, kind of what are we seeing on the ground, what are covered entities reporting, what are pharmacies sharing. Let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Anthony Velasquez. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at PharmaForce. We are a pharmacy solutions provider in the pharmacy space that provides solutions in the 340B space and the pharmacy benefit management space and the pharmacy benefit management and pharmacy management system space. So that's who we are. We do these. If you're new, we do these once a month, third Wednesday of every month. Bailey and I are the ones that lead the conversation. I'll let her introduce herself before I keep going forward. So Bailey, why don't you do a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. My name is Bailey Voelker. I am the Director of Client Services here at PharmaForce. So I oversee our entire account management team, our client solutions team. So basically any client-facing function here at PharmaForce, and also come from a CE background prior to this.
Cool. All right. So without further ado, the topic for today is the 340B rebate pilot model was paused. And what we want to do is just give you a perspective. What does this mean for you? There's a lot of questions of like, does this fix everything? Does this fix all our problems now that this is paused? We're good, things go back to normal, and not quite. So we want to walk through what that means for you as a covered entity. Many of you that are joining us on this call are covered entities. So we want to give you a breakdown on what that means. Before we get into the details of that breakdown, I have to do this normal disclosure because this is public. This goes on our YouTube page. This is email. So I just need to do this. We need to do this disclosure every single time. The information in this presentation, including any analysis or opinions, represent the personal views of the presenters. These perspectives do not necessarily align with the official stance of PharmaForce or its affiliates. This content is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, or professional advice. Neither the presenter nor PharmaForce Group LLC provides legal representation. Viewers should seek guidance from their own legal advisors before making any decisions based on this information. So I think that's very, very clear. But I just want to say that on the outset, some of our content, I'm famous for some of our content being used and submitted to HRSA by manufacturers. So I just have to continue to say that. Um, all right, so agenda for today. So we're going to talk about the rebate, the 340B rebate pilot program, just kind of, level set, give a timeline. We're going to talk about why it didn't proceed. I think many of you have maybe followed the headlines of, what happened, but maybe you don't know all the details behind it. I want to give you a little bit of the inside baseball on what that is. We're going to talk about the implications of the pause because there are some real implications that are causing confusion. We're going to talk about operational challenges and some next steps that you can take. Bailey has some really good, and I have some really good conversations with customers that are facing new challenges that they've never faced before that we want to share with you. And another thing is, please communicate in the chat. Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to use the Q&A function. I want to hear from you. Feel free to share, like, what are you seeing? What is your experience so far? I think many of us are just facing confusion about all of this. And we kind of want to hear anything that you have to share as well, that is helpful to the conversation. So let's go, Bailey, right into it. So how did we get here? Many of you are probably, to you, just like to us, this is bittersweet. Is kind of like the best way that I can think about it. And it's bittersweet in a sense because we spent so much work. We know that you, as Covenant, spent so much work and effort talking about this, meeting about this. Some of you had, done plans for buying down your accumulations. Some of you had contracted with vendors. Some of you had set up new data feeds. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on and on. The calculating the amount of administration preparedness that went into this across all 340B programs across the nation is in the millions, if not billions of dollars in order to prepare for this. I think in general, we felt prepared. We felt like even though we were like right at the end and December kind of 30th, we were getting ready to turn some things on. Unfortunately, I see some hands raised. If you could just hold your questions to the end, if that's okay.
Or
If there's a
you can drop them in that Q&A chat too, and
Yeah,
we'll get
yeah.
to
If
them
there's
at
a
the end.
problem with yeah, if there's a problem with hearing me or anything like that, please put that in the webinar chat. Um, Okay, great. So, yes, if you can, you raise your hand at the end, and we'll unmute you and let you chat with us, and we will love that. So again, we put so much work, so much preparedness, teams of countless of development hours to interface with Beacon and all this stuff. Worries about how it all was going to look, what it was going to look like, but thinking, hey, we'll figure it out. And then the whole thing gets paused. And then everyone is just like, you don't really know how to react to it. I know like many of us were excited. Like if you're a covered entity, you're like a deep breath of, oh, thank God that that's not going forward. And sort of the timeline of events is there was a lawsuit filed. Then a judge in Maine, basically halted the model, and that came out. On top of all of this, this is all going on during the holidays. This is all going on during, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. People are having to stop their time off. Many of us did not take time off because we wanted to be ready for this, and all of that got sort of thrown away. So, HHS files an emergency motion to appeal against the sort of the pause. That was then denied just a couple of, this feels, by the way, I don't know if it feels like this to you. This feels like months ago to me. I mean, it literally feels like a long time ago, but it wasn't.
It's been a long 21 days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it literally, I'm sitting here thinking about this. I'm like, we we kind of moved on from this already, but we haven't. But the court appeals denied HHS's motion to sort of continue, and essentially HHS is in discussion. Hot of the press, I saw somebody posted in the chat. Hot of the press just came out that HHS was given the green light to essentially pull back the appeal. So I don't know necessarily what that means, other than it sounds like there's a going back to the drawing board and coming up with another with another pilot model. I don't believe the rebate model is gone for good. You can read that in the appeals that or the denial that the judge put out. That HRSA has to come up with a mechanism. We just don't know what that is going to look like. So that's a little bit of a title of events. Bailey, anything else that you would add to that?
No,
Um,
I think bittersweet is a good way to describe it. You know, we put a significant amount of time and effort into these new processes, and while it's absolutely a win, it created some other issues that we're going to get into today. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty now about what's next. So, I'm with you. I also don't think this is a permanent cancellation of the rebate model. I think it's going to come back. And so now there's, again, uncertainty about what that looks like in the future and what kind of timeline we're going to have to implement that.
yeah, that's right. That's right. We don't know if that's going to be worse. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, why did the rebate pilot not proceed? So, here's some really interesting excerpts from what the judge in Maine said, which I thought was really, really, really good. In this first quote, it says, like the old adage, crawl, walk, run, the Administrative Procedure Act arbitrary and capricious standard imposes vanishingly minimal requirements that the federal government must satisfy before launching a new program or policy. Essentially, this judge is claiming the government did not do the what was minimal necessary in order for them to then come out with this complete change to how 340B works. I mean, a complete massive change to how the program works and only allow for a short period of time for that to be implemented. So another quote from there that we thought was really interesting says, although HRSA is empowered by statute to achieve the deduplication objective through a rebate model. So this is it's language like this that makes us think something's going to come back. And although it applies to only a subset of drugs sold to 340B covered entities, it marks departure from the agency's decades-long practice of requiring upfront discounts on 340B eligible drugs, and the agency's rollout has involved a rather threadbare administrative record that likely fails to consider and reasonably explain the impact of a rebate model on hospitals. By the way, this is not just on hospitals. The impact would have been significant on grantees, on pharmacies, and everyone involved who rely on upfront price concessions to stretch uh, few resources as far as possible to serve rural and poor communities. So as you can see, I mean, this judge is really drilling into the way the government handled this. It says this is a really, really funny one. It says defendants cannot fly the plane before they build it. The
My
agency's
favorite line.
failure, it is, right? The agency's failure to abide basic requirements of the APA, plaintiff's irreparable injury should the program go into effect, as well as the balance of equities weighing in plaintiff's favor, all counsel against permitting the rebate program to take flight on January 2026. That, of course, is not to say the rebate model is impermissible. So just some really, really vivid language, if I could use that word, from this judge as to some of the core reasons why the pause was put into place. So, breaking that down into kind of like four buckets. So, the administrative violation, the Administrative Procedure Act violation, essentially, and what the court is saying is, look, you try to change this program in such a fundamental way in such a short period of time that it doesn't even pass the smell test of doing something like this, in a way that the United States government is supposed to implement policy. So that will be reason number one. The timeline was rushed. hospitals and other covered entities were given a really short period of time to start submitting claims and doing, all of this. Even the timeline from when the manufacturer plans were approved, by the way, which I don't think a lot of, covered entities and consultants and other folks in the spaces appreciated that as a vendor, there was such a short period of time to develop, test, implement data interfaces, completely brand new systems with a new vendor that has not even really, have a full testing environment to make this work was really, really risky and really, really almost impossible to do it well. Um, the financial harm and operational strain on safety net providers I mean, there's already significant harm. Had this gone into effect, it would have been bigger, especially based on some of the reports that we're hearing now. It would have been even larger for safety net providers, both hospitals and grantees that would have had to deal with this rebate pilot and claims submission. And essentially, HHS failed to justify shifting the 340B, from upfront discounts to this rebate model. And I think it was more on the way it was done. I think that the rebate model, Bailey, like my opinion from what I'm hearing and another feedback is, had the rebate model, even as proposed, had been given a longer period of time or had been implemented in a smaller way, if you will, then maybe we would not be in this situation. I'm just speculating, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I think it was too complex. And like you said, the timeline was too short. We didn't have a long enough runway to really see the whole thing through. We could only focus on certain parts of it, and it was a lot to do in 60 days. Plus, if we remember, the government shutdown also led to some delays. So I think
Forgot about
maybe
that.
we would have had some additional
Forgot
time,
about
but we had a government shutdown that lasted what, about a month. So
that.
that was problematic. There was so much going on in that time frame.
I'm telling you, it feels like a year. Like
It really does.
the last few months of 2025 felt like, a whole year's worth of work.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, Tom,
I
Tom
I
had a
keep
really good, Tom
I
had a
keep
really good
joking.
comment. Go ahead.
I keep joking that we all could have had a much less stressful holiday season if they would have made this decision like maybe early December or even like mid November. But as
Yeah,
it
I
stood, I
know.
think everyone it was chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom in the chat has a really good comment of the cannot fly the plane. That's our favorite
Yeah.
before they could build it. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant too. And by the way, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that the rebate being paused. I'm sort of like 50-50. The rebate being paused did cause for additional operational challenges, which we're going to talk about in a second. So it's also not the full solution. But so let's get into some of that. So what are some of the implications? So let's talk about some of the good stuff. Okay. So the implication of the pilot pause. Number one, upfront 340B pricing remains. Okay. It remains. Um, even though, I mean, there were like several days of uncertainty where like, customers are asking us questions and we don't know. And the wholesalers doesn't know, and Beacon doesn't know, and like we just don't know, didn't know how some things will unfold. Um, Essentially, the pause meant 340B pricing, which we expected to be removed on January 1st for WAC pricing, should now be restored and be provided to providers. So if you are a 340B covered entity, you have access to the 340B pricing up front on these 10 IRA drugs, which accounted for the number of changes based on different reports that I have seen. It's about 180 something plus unique NDCs that are part of those 10 drugs. So something like that, 340B pricing should be restored. I'll talk more about that in just a second because that's not always the case. The rebate submissions and the claims submission is no longer required. So yes, all of the preparation and training that all of you have done, consultants and CEs and the interfaces that we built and we built live, that we built a way to automate the submission of those claims and all of that is completely on hold, not needed, not required. No one is submitting, not anything. There is a return to normal, but that return to normal, it's is not quite. But there
Normal
is
if.
there is a return to normal. I do think that the extent of the reconciliation process was going to be so cumbersome. Even the even the process to submit claims for the split billing side, if you're a hospital or if you're a grantee and you have clinic administered drugs, like that was going to be brutal and really difficult to do. Unfortunately, the pilot status is now unresolved. We don't know what's going to happen, and now we're just in a waiting mode, which I don't even know if that's better. I keep going to, using that bittersweet word, sort of comparison, but like, I don't know if that's better because then now you have an unknown and you don't know if that unknown becomes an even bigger or an even bigger expansion of, rebate model changes. This was supposed to be a pilot. We don't know if that they don't come back with a pilot. We don't know what's going to happen there. Now, there's a couple of other implications that I'll go through quickly, Bailey, which is, if you had, I had heard of entities that were hiring additional FTEs to manage this, you know, so you have to unwind some of that stuff. Entities that built policies and procedures and had to go through compliance committees to get policy and procedures approved, and train staff and met with their contract pharmacies. I mean, and you can go on and on and on. Inventory. I mean, I remember having conversations, Bailey, where everyone was scrambling of we got to order down this inventory. Gateways came out and said, well, you only have until December the 15th or December the 7th. And everyone's scrambling, well, I guess if you left any inventory unreplenished, you can go back and recoup that and order against that because you should have 340B pricing now. The communication of like, this whole back and forth of telling your team, yeah, so it's paused, but it might come back in the future. When is it going to come back? I don't know. Should we budget the losses that we budgeted? Well, no, maybe not. What if it comes back in 6 months? We don't know. It just creates a clarity problem. Compliance teams who were ready and had, SOPs in place to audit this. And ultimately, a lot of you spend time doing vendor contracts, setting up different data interfaces. There were third-party vendors that were out there contracting with covered entities, so all of that has caused some problems in the industry. If you enter into an agreement where you paid upfront money to build something custom and things like that that I had been hearing, all of that is on hold. So Bailey, before we go into some of the, nitty-gritty challenges that entities are facing, any other thoughts on that?
No, just I think the biggest problem is that MFP still went live and we don't have visibility
Yes.
now into that
Yeah.
into 340B eligibility. So those duplicate discounts could still be occurring. There's no clear way to determine what's 340B eligible and what's not at this point. So, I mean, to me, this is unstable and there's got to be something that comes next, but we just don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, hey, I know there's a lot of questions about the MFP. I can see that already, and we're going to get to some of that. We're going to get to some of the things that we're hearing too. But I basically want to do hey, here's what we're hearing still on the ground. I know, there are hundreds of you on this webinar right now. I know that not all of you are PharmaForce customers, and I just want to share just hey, here's some things that we're hearing from across the industry that I think are important to be aware of. So, as it relates to pharmacy claims, there were some TPAs that set global NDC blocks across the board. I just talked to a friend the other day that uses one of what a TPA in the market. I'm not going to say the name, but basically blocks were put in place December 15th, and that still hasn't been lifted. So if again, if you're a covered entity, you're on this call, you're a pharmacy, just make sure that you understand whether any global blocks were applied to your 340B program that could be stopping these drugs from capturing. You want to just understand, okay, because right now everyone is in like, okay, got it, it's paused, but what are you doing? Pharmacy chain, specialty pharmacy, what are you doing? And what is my retail pharmacy doing with this gateway? And all of that. And there's a lot of that going on for a lot of these are our partners, so I'm not going to share names of who's doing what on this webinar to the public, because of that's information that's been shared with us, and we think it should come from your particular vendor. But there's a lot of that going on. There are some pharmacies that have chosen for IRAs and DCs claims to be excluded, and that has not changed. So if you were informed by certain pharmacy partners that IRA and DCs were going to be excluded prior to the pause did not change that, and those are still excluded by those chain pharmacies. So make sure that who those are so that you can prepare and be aware. But what I can tell you confidently is that a lot of chain pharmacies, including specialty pharmacies, and some other really big provider of pharmacy providers in the market in the space, are blocking globally, universally, the IRA NDCs that went live on 1/1/2026 under the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay? So that is still being blocked. There are order blocks that are still in place. Okay? And there's even some gateways that are requiring new additional code to identify these IRA claims, in order for those to even be identified. So, there's a subset of these IRA drugs are blocked, just for the Part D. And there's another world where the IRA are blocked across all payers, unless additional code is submitted. So you want to know this. If you are managing a 340B program and you are on this webinar, it is very, 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 very critical that you do inventory and do a crosswalk of what is going on across each one of my contract pharmacy arrangements and my contract pharmacy gateway partners. So Bailey, anything else that you will add to that before I go to the next one?
You actually stole my line, but just to reiterate what Anthony said, it is so crucial right now that you communicate. Communication is number one right now. Communicate with your vendors, build that crosswalk. They're all doing different things and it changes sometimes daily. We've had a lot of different communication between different vendors saying they're going to change their approach. So just communicate and keep on top of it. I know it's a lot to keep up with. Unfortunately, that is the landscape we're in. And that's why we say it's bittersweet.
Yeah. Okay. Challenge number two. This is the second, I'm not really doing this in any particular order, but challenge number two is there are reports, we've heard this from the wholesalers who already said, we have reports from some of our wholesalers who already said 340B pricing might not be restored on day one. Okay, so there are reports of drug catalogs having pricing issues. So auditing and reviewing your drug catalogs is really, really critical. And we have another slide on this going into the weeds on this. Number three is what a lot of you are talking about in the chat. I'm tracking a little bit of your activity, and I know this is the hottest topic right now is for those of you that own an in-house pharmacy and are servicing Medicare Part D patients with an IRA drugs. There is a lot of funny business going on with those claims being approved. There is a lot of confusion. There are reports of claims being denied for 340B that no one knows the source of where that information is coming from. So these are kind of like the three buckets of challenges that the CEs are facing, although the pause has been put in place. I'm sure you all can come up with, other things that are going on in your program and other things that you're experiencing. But these are the three things that we are seeing on the ground and hearing from customers that are very complex challenges. So let's get into the weeds. I think I talked about this already. Again, You want to know how your TPA is handling this. We were going to put ours into place on January 1st. We were able to pivot and not do that. We did have to block some global stuff for some of the gateways and things like that. But you want to know how your TPA is doing this. You want to review your TPA configurations. If you use a TPA where you went in and added blocks prior to the January 1st, 2026 go live, don't forget to look into that. That's easy to overlook and find it later in your invoicing when your revenue goes down. So just, make sure that you don't miss the basic steps. Okay. Like Bailey has done program management. I've done program management for some large organizations and grantees. My first role in 340B was a grantee in the North Philadelphia area, which I love. I love those days. That's my roots is 340B program management. And sometimes like you don't want to miss the basics. Okay, you don't want to skip the basic small steps of making sure all your configuration are accurate. Okay. So we're hearing of claims not capturing, we're hearing of savings opportunities being missed, we're hearing of claims falling out, because of whack pricing being loaded. So there's a lot going on with the claims that you want to make sure is all in line with what you expect. The gateways is a big one. It really is. From a gateway perspective, there's a lot going on right now of it is all over the place. There's certain specialty pharmacies that are allowing you to include the IRA NDCs, or they're including it themselves. There's others that are blocking them altogether. There's others that are only blocking them for Part D. So it's a little bit all over the place. And you want to know that, anything that you could still order or go back and recapture, that you are taking that step to doing that. Okay. And having those conversations and reaching out. Don't be afraid to ask for a conversation, and reaching out to your TPA, or if you have a relation with that gateway partner for those things. Bailey, anything you would add to that?
Just again, communication is so, so critical right now. You need to be communicating with all of your vendors, making sure that you're doing audits. That's obviously a hallmark of 340B program. So if you're managing a program, you've got to audit, but definitely make sure you are auditing specifically those 10 drugs because we are seeing a lot of anomalies.
Yep. All right, so the wholesaler pricing problem. We got a response from a wholesaler that said, we rely on manufacturers. We will correct any pricing issues with a credit and rebuild process. Some of you haven't even gotten invoices yet. That's how soon this is to even see what orders were generated at whack pricing because your 340B pricing wasn't updated. So be on the lookout for that. All right. At the end of January, or even now, you will not you will, we encourage you to do a review and audit essentially your purchases to make sure that you're not buying something at whack, that it was just due to a pricing error. We have heard at least from one wholesaler distributor who said we will correct any pricing issues with a credit and rebuild process. If you don't know what a credit and rebuild process is that the purchase at whack will be credited and there will be a new PO trigger or purchase trigger at 340B pricing. So to just keep it simple, the drug process at a $6,000 pricing, and it will then be credited at $6,000 and reprocessed at 340B for $500 or whatever the pricing is. So make sure that you are reviewing that, and that is very, very critical. Reviewing that is one thing, okay? So reviewing that, doing a credit rebuild is one thing. The other thing is anything that fell out because you had a profit only or winners only program and that pricing was updated to whack or removed or something like that, you want to look into that to make sure that that is reprocessed properly and that your catalogs are properly updated. So you want to look at that. And then the hot thing, right? This is what everyone is talking about. I've been talking to clients and talked to a client who says, "Hey, I have no idea what is going on, but there are claims that are getting denied for being 340B, and we have no idea how that determination is being made. We are not submitting any data. We don't know how. the that side of the beacon platform can determine that something is 340B, and they're able to prove that the claim is not 340B. So we're hearing reports from some of our clients. I'm seeing it in the chat. So in the chat, you all can read and go through everything that are, everything that people are saying about what's going on as it relates to this. But it is not fun, and there's going to be. I'm predicting there's going to be litigation related to this because the only avenue that you essentially have at this point is the administrative dispute resolution process through HRSA, which is, you have to compile the claims, you have to submit it, you have to wait for a review, you have to go through all this stuff, and essentially it becomes a very burdensome process for entities to go through. So it is very difficult to do that. It is still very, very early on. I am not making any accusations or saying that anything is necessarily wrong at this point. It is very early and too soon to tell, but there does seem to be some situations where there's confusion. So if you are an entity-owned pharmacy, if you have an in-house pharmacy, there are reportings of 90% of claims being denied. Some of these are very expensive claims. There's no clear communication or resolution from anyone on how to address this. So what I would say, here's what I would say, here's what I want. There is power in numbers. So if you have a peer hospital that is going through something like this, I would say reach out, connect, see if they're facing the same challenges. Because I do think that this is one of those things that there will need to be some sort of, resolution to quickly, because if not, entities are going to be severely financially harmed. Um, so to be clear, there are claims that are clearly not 340B claims being denied a MFP rebate because of 340B, and the entity never submitted a claim that said that that was a 340B eligible transaction. So Bailey, anything you will add to that? I know you've been talking to clients as well.
Yeah, I mean, we just keep hearing that their MFP rebates are being denied, and I've seen a couple, I've seen a couple just news articles about different manufacturers coming out and saying we have claims data, and I have personally, I have concerns about that, where that data is coming from. Is it complete data? How are they obtaining that data? And I don't think any of it at this point is complete. I don't think it paints a clear picture of what's truly 340B eligible and what's not. So I don't think
Yep.
there is a clear way to determine whether or not the MFP rebate should be applied or the 340B discount. So that's why I keep saying something new has to roll out. There has to be some different version of this where there is eligibility or there is visibility into 340B eligibility as well, but we're just in this weird purgatory where we don't really know what that's
Yeah.
going to look like.
Yeah, and it's frustrating and it's confusing, and entities don't know what to do and no one's answering them. So, and again, this is if you're an entity and you have your entity-owned pharmacy, you have an in-house pharmacy, this is where you're going to face these challenges. I don't even know, by the way, I'm saying this talking to entities. If you're a pharmacy, I mean, I can only imagine what you're facing right now as it relates to this and the difficulty of tracking it. Have you been paid on everything? I mean, it is really, really challenging to track all of this. All right, so as we come to a close, feel free to take a picture of this. We are going to send out these slides, and we are going to post a recording. So if you want to share this with your compliance committee, with your team, with your 340B program managers, this is a kind of 6-step recommendation checklist that we recommend that you follow to make sure that you are auditing your 340B program. I think when you say audit, it should be like synonymous with 340B. Like if you say audit, that you already know you're talking about the 340B program. But these are some action steps that you can take A lot of these things I've already talked about. Those of you on the call, to many of you, a lot of these things will make sense. I saw a question that someone said, what is a gateway? A gateway is essentially a a hub or a central hub system that manages claims for pharmacies that have a lot of different locations or contracts. And so they control the ordering in that case, and the TPA is essentially responsible for capturing the claims and sending that supporting data. So again, these steps we think are really, really, really critical to making sure that post pause you are positioned in the best place to be compliant, number one, and number two, to continue to optimize your 340B program. So auditing your drug catalogs, that is something that you should be able to simply do. Finding those drugs, those NDCs are posted. You can find them online. You can get them from your TPA. Reaching out to your wholesaler if you have pricing issues. Coordinating with your TPAs about making sure the latest 832s are uploaded. Making sure you don't have non-profitable claims because of this. Requesting credit and rebuilds where applicable. Tracking the MFP rebate, which this is the biggest one, is number 6. Okay. And you want to make sure you're staying informed. All right, this is the last slide, I promise. What is the road ahead? What are we to expect? I already see a question of like, my executive team is asking me, when is this expected to be clear? Here's the answer. I know you're not going to like this, and none of us like this. We don't know. There is no timeline that has been made available publicly to anyone as to what happens next. We have no idea. So right now we're waiting for the courts to decide. We don't know if there's going to be a rebate reset. The way that time is flying so much, next thing it's September again, and the 2027 list of IRA drugs is going to go into effect, which is even bigger. It includes the GLP-1s and a bunch of other stuff. So if you haven't done that, I don't want to give you heartburn, but the 2027 IRA list is already published, and you can find that, and that is what is going to go into effect in 2027. So we don't know. We're going to just keep waiting until we see what happens next. Obviously, I don't have to say this, but just staying prepared is really important. Staying prepared for quick changes. We don't know when it's going to go into effect, but I know that understanding your data, being able to update your projections, and ultimately being ready to go back into rebate mode once we find that out will be critical. So, Bailey, you get the final words, and I will put this slide out with our conference, our upcoming winter conference.
Yeah, I do want to add just in response to Astrid's question in the chat, I do want to add you asked if it could restart at any time, and I don't think that's the case based on everything we've seen. I don't think that it's going to be an immediate restart. I think there will be clear defined timelines and guidelines and what to expect, especially based on the fact that the whole thing was shut down due to not having enough time to prepare and not having clear guidelines. So I don't think you have to worry about an immediate restart, on April 1st or anything like that. I could be wrong, but I think they're going to give us a little bit longer runway to prepare next time. And I think there will be maybe some more clear guidelines in place.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't think it's going to be rushed the next time around. Um, um,
I
so,
hope
and by the
not.
way, I know, as we conclude, I do want to, there's a couple of Q&A questions, but I do want to say, man, thank you for the chat. The chat is awesome. Thank you for everyone that's contributing. I think we all need to have a like come together, come together session to all just talk about how much this whole process sucks for those of us in 340B. Um, all
So
right,
come see us in
so
San Diego.
yes, come see us in San Diego. We are going to be in San Diego at the 340B conference. So if you're going, stop by, say hello. Can you believe it? It's already here. It's just in a couple of weeks. So yeah, so please come by, come say hello, give us some feedback, and all of that. All right, so let's answer a few questions. Hey, by the way, those of you, okay, I'm gonna give you this opportunity. We have hundreds of people still here. All right, so obviously this is a really hot topic. All right, if anyone wants to come off mute and have a conversation about your experience of what you are experiencing right now as it relates to MFP denials and the process that you have gone through. I saw someone, sharing some really good examples. Please, please, please raise your hand. All right, I see a hand raised. All right, you're gonna get called on. Who is this? Justin. All right. All right, Justin, let's see. I'm gonna bring you in. Hold on. Let me get to here. Okay, we got all right. All right, Justin, you're gonna go first. Here we go. I always want to say this. Hey, Justin, you're on the air. Like a radio host. Justin, can you hear us? You're muted. All right, going once, going twice. All right, let me do that. All right, Justin, you lost your opportunity, unfortunately. All right, so Maureen Morrison. All right, Maureen, you are on the air. Maureen, can you hear us? All right, no Maureen. All right, we're gonna try one more person. All right, here we go. Maureen, I'm muting you again if you want to talk. All right, so Tahiri, I think that's how you say your name.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We got a winner. Thank you.
We're live.
Okay, so for those people who missed their shot, there was a button you had to you had to push to be heard.
All
So
right, wait. So hold on. Before you say anything else, tell us where you're from.
I
Well,
am
first of all, tell us how to say your name and where you're from.
sure. Okay, my name is Tahira Green
Tahira.
Guillory. I hail from New Orleans, Louisiana, and
Awesome.
and I am the 340B coordinator at Inclusive Care. We are an F2HC and we have in-house pharmacies as well. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. All right, so what's your experience been?
So I'm having the experience as we speak.
All right, so a live breakdown.
Yeah. So actually it was due to the conversations that you guys had. I opened up Beacon because again, we were prepared and trying to prepare for both sides of this ride, the
Yep.
rebate model as well as the MFP. And now I'm looking at the MFP because the whole time I was checking, nothing was happening. And now I see I've got 50% claims that are not being that are being considered 340B, and I don't even know where I don't even understand what it's telling me. For Stellara being anybody, so if anybody can offer me a little help, um, I don't understand how it's is it showing that, it says method for determining MFP rebate amount, code 4, no refund paid dash 340B. What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I wish I had Tahira, I wish I had an answer for you. I talked to a customer who had a 90% denial rate and is asking the same questions. So have you tried reaching out, by the way? This is the question I've been asking people. Have you tried reaching out to Beacon?
So I did put in for there's a question, a clicker where you can click
Yeah.
and do an inquiry. I haven't gotten anything back just yet. So again, guys, thank you for listening to me and being here to take my question.
I
And
wish I wish I had an answer for you. I feel terrible, but thank you for sharing that experience because I think you validate what we're hearing. That's exactly
yeah,
what we're hearing. And this is a mess. This is really a mess. And it's really unfortunate that you're having to deal with this.
right. So if anybody has not, or as of yet, went it back into Beacon to check their MFP side, go ahead. You'll again, I wasn't expecting to see activity, but here it is, and it's wrong.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So Tara, thank you so much for being the first to break the ice. I see another one. I see Sarah willing to talk. If you have had success, here's what I want to do because we want to be I want to help. Man, it would be so cool if someone came up and said, "Yes, I know exactly how to fix that or address that or experience that." That would be awesome. So, Sarah, I'm going to unmute you and please tell us where are you from. So, Sarah, I just unmuted you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. I'm Sarah Topov. I'm from Valley Medical Center in Renton, Washington. We're a dish hospital. And
Awesome.
yeah, we are trying to crosswalk all the data that we have right now between Beacon, MTF, and our TPA so we can work backwards and reconcile what's 340B versus not. And it is definitely a mess. One of the things that I was just going to call out that I'm actually waiting for a response from the chat in Beacon right now is it's interesting because they'll give the like claim status as identified as either 340B or SDRA
Yeah.
for the pricing, but I had one that was identified as SDRA, but then if you clicked into the claim itself, it showed that we got a $0 refund because it had a P9 code for 340B. So mixed messaging, and I don't think they know the answer as to why either.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And Sarah, what do you know what those codes even mean? Like, is there like a crosswalk for that?
Yes, there is. And actually, if you in Beacon, on the issue codes, there's like
Yeah.
if you click it or hover over it, it'll tell you what that code represents. And it looks like there's a comment that someone's seeing the same thing too. So I asked Beacon specifically, is the SDRA or 340B identifier coming from Beacon or MTF? And then
Hmm.
who is giving the issue code identifier because they're telling us two different things.
Yeah.
And we're getting a $0 refund. So for now, that's something maybe to look out for. But yeah, essentially what we're doing is just pulling in the MTF claims, which you can extract. If you need to get the Beacon claims out, there's no extract option right now.
There's no export button I heard. There's no
Yeah, but
download or export, which is crazy.
you can copy and paste into Excel. You just have to mess with the formatting a little bit and get rid of like some extra lines that they have in between for the NDC. And you can do that quickly by sorting. So that's what I've been doing. And then yeah, just working backwards to your TPA to see what's aligning and what's not. And most of it's not aligning, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Sarah, at least from what I'm hearing is the only option that providers have right now is to go through the administrative dispute resolution directly to HRSA and
Mm,
to submit these cases, but that is a pain to do that. You have to compile this data and then you have to submit it to HRSA, then you have to wait for them to get back to you, and then they have this whole process on how they meet and they have a board and they have to, I mean, like it's you can't do that,
mhm.
you can't do that as like a new process to go through that.
Right.
Um,
And it's also frustrating. Yesterday in the Beacon webinar, they were saying that if something is identified as I think not 340B, but it is 340B after the fact, like after it's finalized, I think in that scenario you have to submit the claim to ESP as part of the good faith inquiry process. So it's like our hands are tied if that's our only resolution is submitting data to ESP anyways to get something corrected.
yeah, that is crazy. Sarah, thank you for sharing your experience. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
You know what I'm thinking, by the way, I'm thinking this for everybody is I do, and I would encourage you to, if you are a hospital that is part of 340B Health, is to reach out. If you are a grantee that is part of, the grantee representatives, and I know there's several of them, but reach out because I think there's gonna have to be kind of like power in numbers. But yeah, really interesting feedback. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. All right, so let me just go through. I'll take like two or three questions real quick, and then we will stop there. Thank you so much again to those of you that are still on. All right, there's a couple of quick questions here. So number one from Mike, will the Eli Lilly mandate for in-house pharmacies submit patient-level data to 340B ESP now essentially replace the rebate model as a way for manufacturers to obtain data from covered entities, especially if other manufacturers follow suit as they are expected to do unless HRSA or courts intervene? Mike, that's a really good question, way above my head. It sounds like you are spotting sort of like the new trend where things are going is that manufacturers are then going to go to ESP and ask for the claims data because they want the claims data. And so I think that that's a very good observation, Mike. And I think you're right. I think you're spot on that. Yes, we will. There was a question, will we share the slides? Yes, and the recording we will share. It's spelled out anywhere how manufacturers are now making a determination. Yeah, we don't know how they're making a determination if it's 340B or not because we were thinking like if they are using ESP, there's no way that they have the data for all pharmacies because you're designating a pharmacy. So there's no way that all of that data exists. So we don't quite know. I don't know how they are making that determination. Nicole has a question. Are you hearing that we will receive some answers at the 340B Winter Conference? Nicole, I have not heard that. I have not heard anything around that. I am pretty sure that this is going to be at the top of the conversations, at the upcoming conference and for several months to come. So we have to keep on trying to find out we are going to stay on top of this. I'm already thinking that our next webinar topic is going to be all on this, and we're going to start, reaching out to hospital groups and different councils and legal teams to get an idea on what is going on with this and what are solutions to do this. Um, can you please talk about the Eli Lilly recurring claims data, February 1st, 2026? That was from someone that's an anonymous attendee. Yeah, we saw that as well. At this point, unfortunately, I think we've seen it for so many months and we've seen it for so long that we're kind of like numb to it. One of those things that just come and you're like, all right, here we go. Another one is sort of, and there's nothing that the government is doing to stop it or HRSA or anything. So it's the world that we're living in as, providers serving patients in our space. All right, Amanda. Hi, Amanda. I hope you're still out there. Are contract pharmacies being denied MFP rebates if the claim is not 340B but suspected to be 340B? How can Beacon determine if the claim is 340B without claims? Amanda, this is a really good question because I don't know that. A lot of the insight that I got, similar to Sarah's experience and Tahira's, is from covered entities that own their own pharmacies, so they have the full insight into everything. And those are the entities that I'm talking to that are saying like, hey, this is crazy. Like, we don't know how they're making this determination. And the claim is not even 340B. So it's wrong in the first place. So it's really crazy. And Amanda, I don't know the question to that. If you find that out, please share with me so that we can help others in the market. Corey, are you going to do a separate webinar for the MFP? Corey, you know what? I think we will do a separate webinar for that. I think we will. It's so new, by the way, just so everyone knows, like this is literally, what's today, the 21st?
21 days in.
Yeah. 21 days in, you gotta minus like six Saturdays and Sundays, right? 6 weekends or something like that, or 3 weekends.
Yeah.
It's very new, Corey. So as we get more information, I think that this is the topic that everyone wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. Jasmine says the pilot program is paused. Why are claims still being submitted? Jasmine, that's a really good question. When we talk about claim submission, we're not talking about the ESP. The ESP side continues, but there should not be claims submitted to Beacon for 340B rebates because that has been paused. So hopefully that clarifies it, Jasmine. January 1st, 2026, entities would have had to submit claims to Beacon for 340B rebates. That is now paused. So Jasmine had another question. Will ESP and Beacon platforms both be live at the same time? Yeah, right now, Jasmine, you only have to worry about ESP, not Beacon right now. The ESP does not go anywhere. Um, okay, cool. All right. Well, that's it. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I really do hope that this was helpful. Our goal is to always provide value and make these really interactive conversations. We don't want to be like stuffy, and I'm not saying anyone's stuffy, but I just like we don't want to like fill this with legalese and all this. We want it to be like collaborative and fun and operational and in the weeds because if you've been a 340B program manager coordinator, that's your life. Is you're in the weeds of data and policy and auditing. And that is our hope for this monthly webinar. All right, with all that said, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. We will come back with a great topic next month and get to the bottom of this MFP rebate denial. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.